Hello, and welcome back. We are at the podcast that now has a name, which is Denise Roth at Large. I think we took a little time to try and make sure we had the right titling. We thought about a lot of different things. But I think that really it is Denise Roth running for an at large seat and just sort of a broad opportunity for her to talk about what that means for her. So,
Yeah.
welcome to Denise Roth at Large, Denise Roth.
Thank you, Nikki Baker. Oh my goodness.
She's pulling out.
Sorry, Brian.
We go way back because she's pulling out my maiden name. so,
Right, sorry.
um, so today, let's, as a recap for those who may or may not have been on the first couple of episodes, we
Right.
started off with some of your background, a little snapshot of who you are, and then we moved into last time you talked about the playbook.
Yes.
And why we need a playbook and what you would envision that to look like
Yeah.
as we go forward.
Yeah.
And so let's use that as a jumping off place to
Okay.
talk a little bit about your pillars, right? Your platform.
Yes.
So it's one thing to have a playbook. It's another thing to have the pieces of the puzzle or sort of the individual columns that drive you there.
Sure. Yes.
So you want to reveal your pillars to the people.
I don't know how much of a reveal is. If you can get on the World Wide Web, you would find it.
Get on the Google.
Right. But yeah, as I think about, what a strategic playbook for Greensboro looks like and what are the areas that we're really needing to think comprehensively about as we are looking over, the next 5, 10 years or just to go forward. It really is in three areas that I think about. Strategic growth, and just what that means, and we can talk through that. Opportunity, just access to the jobs that are coming online, but also just future opportunity overall in safe communities, and how we are evolving our communities and how people feel about where they are and how their community evolves.
Great. I think that's a solid platform.
Yeah.
And so we'll just jump right in. Let's
Yeah.
start with, we'll go one by one.
Yeah,
So the first
yeah.
one you mentioned was smart growth.
Yes. And when I say smart growth, that is very intentional. Growth will happen, and oftentimes growth happens whether we want it or not. But the real key is how smart we are about that growth. That is how are we really preparing for what that growth will bring and what it looks like. I think it's very essential for us to ensure that there's inclusive opportunity across our community, that we are really doubling down on smart growth. That's looking at how what the water and sewer impact is going to be with growth and we talked last time about how we have about 20,000 jobs coming in with Jet Zero and Toyota, not to mention the other sort of aviation mobility and just mobility activity that's happening overall. So you think about that and you think, what does a growing community need, especially if all 20,000 people chose to live in the borders of the city of Greensboro or even nearby? They need growing water and sewer. They need police and safety in terms of response time. They need libraries. They also need housing. They need infrastructure. And ideally, as you have communities grow, people will interact with infrastructure differently. More people will walk. More people will look for transit opportunities. So it's really thinking in that regard. I have been in the midst of questionnaires over the past, thank you all for all the book reports because I'm doing a lot of them. But they've been important questionnaires from communities, organizations in our community, and asking really important questions. And so it's really making me think critically about, what is my answer? And the road to 10,000 has come up on a number of them, and the city manager's sort of challenge of 10,000 units by 2030. And, something I would really love to see there is us emphasizing the city-owned properties, and utilizing those platforms as way to create examples and models of the type of future housing that we can have in our community. I haven't seen as much mixed income housing, for example. And there's a number of communities I've worked across where you really do have housing that looks the same, a blended population of people with various income levels from one door to the next. You don't know the difference, but it's creating a sense of community where people really are connected maybe by access to jobs initially, but then it becomes a community that is connected by their kids or their activity, their extracurricular activity. But those are the types of things that you can create and incentivize. And it's a great space of when you have public infrastructure coming together with private innovation. And what I've seen in the past is communities saying, hey, we have public property that we own. We want to bring in this case, mixed income housing. Bring us your best concepts. Let's work together to bring this online. What would it take? Let's be willing to explore. Let's be willing to innovate together and really bringing these new ideas to our communities so people can know what they look like, so that they can see, touch, feel. And it really sort of creates a new approach because we're going to need to think creatively about all of our space and to bring multiple types of housing online.
And so you think that, I mean, you feel pretty confident based on what you've seen of Greensboro and what kind of models are out there that we have the bandwidth and the resources to do that?
I absolutely do. Greensboro has the bandwidth, the innovation, the committed community partners, both private and public, that are very committed to how our community grows and change. So I feel very confident about that.
Great.
Yeah.
And then, I hear some of the pieces that you've talked about housing in terms of the smart growth. Are there other elements to smart growth that you see? When I think of growth, sometimes some people may have a negative connotation of growth,
Yeah.
right? Like, which is sprawl, perhaps.
Yes.
And so how do you avoid those negative pieces? And is part one.
Yeah. Well, I think, growth can bring up a lot of fear because we all become comfortable with what we know, especially in our communities. And we've we go through a diligent process to choose where we're going to live and where we're going to spend time. And to see that change, and especially if it changes dramatically without you having a say, it can be very shocking. So I think the number one item is for us to talk openly and think creatively about what growth will bring, and not leave it to chance and not wait and see, but to have those debates and have evaluation of the possibility. Yes, some of it will be in outer areas that have not been developed in the past. Some of it will be infill, in meaning in urban centers where we may have some development that exists currently that is raised and other things put in its place. All those things happen. It's why it's important. And, the city has a strong planning team, so they do planning designs on a regular basis. But it's really up to, and I think especially up to council, to take these pieces and chunks and bring it out to the community and talk openly about how our community can change, getting input from our current residents and thinking broadly about who we want to attract as our next community partner.
Well, and then so part two to that question, maybe for me, is around we do have employers coming in, big ones, right?
Yes.
And so certainly housing is one component, but what other pieces? And I think you mentioned transportation as a key component.
Yes, and as I think about opportunity, that's really where sort of that second item.
I can wait until we get to
that. No, but
we can
I
flow straight into that.
This is a great segue. But before I go too much further, I did want to just take a moment to note we had the passing of Jim Melvin this weekend. And he has been just a pillar in this community. I've only lived here 20 years, and he was one of the first people I learned of and then had the fortune to meet. And the vision that he has brought in different aspects of growth and change in the community has been important, and he will be a missed voice and perspective for our community overall, and certainly has been an important civic leader. And I think about that because I think about the amount of time I spent both when I was at the chamber and as city manager in preparing for the mega site. And the mega site, is in Randolph County,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not actually in Greensboro, but Greensboro and Greensboro leadership was very much a part of identifying that site, raising money for it, bringing into the perspective of leadership at the state level, and encouraging and gaining support for investment in the mega site. And Jim was at the charge of that. So that's why I think about that. But I bring that up to say that whether it's the mega site in Randolph County, or if it's at the airport where we are seeing a lot of industrial activity occur, how people access those jobs will be important. Opportunity means actually being able to get to those jobs. I would love to see there be workforce transportation, maybe lanes that are designated for buses certain times of the day that are going down 421, or that is going out to the airport, that are bringing workers both from maybe Rockingham County and parts of Greensboro over to these sites and to these job opportunities. Our opportunities is really about thinking about what are the apparatus around that's going to make workers successful. Sometimes it's multiple shifts of childcare, right? The
Mm.
childcare that is off cycle, that covers third and fourth shift. And it also is thinking about our young people. One of the questionnaires that I answered this week asked about young people, and I think there's such a great opportunity in the K-12 and college aged young people, 18, 24, that it has opportunity to micro certification or training that comes to their community. Our community colleges does a very good job at partnering with companies that are coming online to create training opportunities. But it would be even great to see sort of outposts of workforce training spaces in the community, and for young people to be able to go over and understand, what does it mean to work in aviation? Does that mean I fly a plane? Oh, there's other aspects to aviation that maybe I can be interested in. Maybe if I worked a technical aspect of whether it was um, mechanical design or chair upholstery, that there's actually a full-time good job that's in that work, because there's a whole range of activity that will come around the aviation industry in that case, or chip development or battery design, that can touch young people and young adults at multiple levels. There's quite a bit when I think of opportunity. That's why that platform is really important. It is thinking about all of the aspects that are going to come with the work that accompanies these companies. It's also the suppliers that support them. That's a whole, and that's where we're talking about a pipeline of work and activity opportunity, not just the jobs today, but we're talking about a lifetime of jobs, and a lifetime of opportunity that we can really leverage and build on right now.
Well, and it as you talk about all of these different pieces across a spectrum, it's like a diversified portfolio, and yet with specialties, and nuances within that, right? When you think about your financial portfolio, you want to have a lot of different types of investments so that you're not, over investing or under investing in one place, and then that
Right.
way you don't lose if something goes away.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you also want to make sure that you're specialized, you understand what's going on, so
Yes.
it's sort of almost like a diversified portfolio of the community, where you're saying, I want all these tiers of income included,
Yeah.
I want all these types of jobs included, I want the building blocks starting with the young people that then feeds up into these specialized sectors.
That's right. And that's what the playbook, whether it's a playbook framework or whatever the framework is, but that's why the frameworks are important, is thinking in terms of what are the vertical spaces, what is the foundational aspect that we can employ to ensure that our community and the people in our community are strong and positioned well, and what are those verticals that we can deploy to get in the places where we need to be. All of these things do not happen at once. Absolutely not. But do they build on each other? Absolutely. Do you Are you successful without planning it? Not typically. And what's great is we have these opportunities in front of us right now. We don't have to. We've done the hard work of, finding and attracting, et cetera. Now it's really about executing, but also being strategic about what the future can bring. Not just looking at what's right in front of us, but where can we build off of that?
Well, and I love that you say not what's just right in front of us, because I think for a lay person, just an average community member, you may feel like these things that come before city council, like, where did this come from? It just
Yeah.
came up today. I hadn't heard about this before. And so I think that's where, again, going back to the playbook or a framework that is sort of longer. And I do think that, some of our community leaders, like the Jim Melvins of the world, right, who seed something and they see the long range,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
then you have to operationalize it step by step,
Yeah.
which is something
Yeah.
that's basically been your entire career.
Yeah, and it's being able to do the balance of understanding the big picture and sort of painting a vision of the future, and then bringing it back to what does that mean for today, and what is the reality of the steps that we need to take. Yeah.
And so, I think the other piece to that is just being able to communicate across the community, right?
Yeah.
And being able to translate that for the average person.
And to keep it front of mind.
Mhm.
Our life happens, day gets in the way. From a city council perspective, our role, the role of a council, really is holding that strategic vision and bringing it forward, and then making it make sense for people. As we talk about new programs, as we talk about the budget, as we take different policy steps, connecting it back to why this matters. What is it that we are trying to achieve, and why you should care, community member,
Mhm.
about what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And then, I think particularly sometimes the pandemic seems so long ago and
I
sometimes it
know.
seems like yesterday. But I think that there was such a extended period of time where it did feel reactive and where it felt like, we're just having to see where this lands.
Mm.
But I feel a little bit like we're moving beyond that reactive stage as a community, right? Where we can start
Yeah.
once again going, okay, we've got our baseline set. I mean,
Yeah.
where do you fall on them?
No, I know what you're saying. I mean, the thing coming out of COVID, first going into it, we didn't know what the end would look like,
Mm-hmm.
and then we were unsure when was the end. We were told it was the end multiple times, but
Yeah.
when once we were actually moving on from it, it sort of defining what life looks like going forward and getting comfortable enough to plan for a future, to think forward, was not easy for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
There's I read an article or something of that nature where um, the concept of being in COVID was compared to a capital, or having a bank account. And what the concept was that as we relate to each other's people, as we spend time together, as we share ideas, as we talk, but more so in person, that we're building our capital with each other, we're building our bank, in that it depleted itself over time with COVID. And so we had to figure out how to relate to each other, and how to work together again. And then that, in our terms right now, with thinking about city council, it's how do we dream again, and how we think about what the future can be, and thinking about how are we planning for that, and coming back together and trusting and building together.
That
Yeah.
really resonates for me
Yeah.
because that's not a commentary at all on the work that's been done in Greensboro
No.
in the last 5 years. It's
No.
just to say, I don't know, it feels a little different now, like that there is a little more stability to be able to start really moving beyond. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
having that as jumping off place.
Yes. So the one thing I'll comment before, I don't know if we were closing up, but we haven't talked about safe communities.
It's your
and I do
podcast,
think it's,
Denise.
yes, that's right. It is my podcast. I can say what I want. But safe communities. And, for me, I really think it's crucial. I grew up in inner city, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But um, communities and feeling safe really start with people, and feeling that you have ownership over an agency over what's around you and what's happening. The bridge to public safety officers, and feeling confident about who's around you and who's spending time in that you recognize them and that they're there tomorrow and that they're there again 5 years from now. So having a, consistent group of public safety officers, and that's police and fire and 911, et cetera, that we've become comfortable with, but also feeling as though I have some voice in how my community is evolving, all add to public safety. And so that was the third pillar that I just wanted to make sure I gave voice to, because community safety really does start in my home, and feeling comfortable both when I close my door, but also when I step out, and who I'm interacting with and what's around me, and who's around me. So I think it's all of those pieces that is an important part of sort of the foundational setting for us as a community in Greensboro.
It's interesting that you brought that up sort of on the heels of, I mean, the pandemic. It really has been, years of challenge.
Yeah, feeling
and
insecure.
communities, not just ours, right? Talking about and looking at how safety is brought about, but also people feeling like they weren't brought into the conversation, I think.
Yeah, it's part of it from a sort of national leadership perspective was figuring out what's going on and how do we manage it. But yeah, we're trying to gain that back. That's another aspect of us um, filling up our coffers and feeling like we own what's around us again.
And certainly, I mean, the Greensboro Police Force is part of the city council's jurisdiction and responsibility. So, I mean, I do think that the average person is trying to figure out what safe communities means. Right?
Yes. And we're defining it as we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But, being thoughtful, planning forward, having innovative concepts, bringing ideas to the table, giving a space and voice for people to bring concepts and ideas, all add to feeling that you have safe communities and feeling agency of your community.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about what's next.
And it's local, right, as you're saying. But then also, as we've talked about before with your background, it's being able to look at other models and other places, because, again, it's not just Greensboro that's wrestling with these kinds of things.
Absolutely not.
And a lot of the tensions and pressures are similar in other areas. We may not be, Los Angeles, right? But we're also, a larger mid-sized city. If that's if that's a word, but I mean, we're a mid-sized city.
City, yes.
But I think, to your point, when you're talking about these bread and butter issues, your pillars are really based on the stuff that I think are relatable for people. It's we don't want to stay a small, insular town, but it needs to feel authentic.
Right.
It needs to feel like,
I think, said another way, Greensboro is growing and the growth is exciting. But how do we ensure that growth happens in a way that is inclusive of our whole community and that we can feel good about what we look like 5 and 10 years from now?
Mm-hmm. And then, so similarly, let's get your one-liner on. That was your one-liner on growth, right?
Yeah.
Let's just bring it home, folks. Then opportunity.
Yeah, the opportunity abounds. And the question is, how do we make that opportunity available for everyone? We can just keep going with this.
And I know. I was like, I think I just stumbled on the way to hit this. And then, safe communities. Everybody wants to feel safe.
Safe community starts at the kitchen table. And unless we have those voices there, we won't achieve it.
Right. Even, because it can come in or it can go out both ways. So, well, I think we've sort of hit loosely on your pillars today.
Yes.
I'm sure we can come back and bring some more information in at another time, but
absolutely. We'll keep at it.
People, if you have the questions about today's podcast, you want to go deeper, feel free to email and let us know what else you'd like to hear about her pillars, about her platform, about her background. Yes. Otherwise, we will just keep throwing stuff out into the ethos and hope that you guys are interested. So
sounds good.
Well, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
It's good to be here with you again.
Thank you, Nikki.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.